It's really a pleasure for me to speak about my favorite part of my research. Just one story which Irakli missed. Once me and Irakli were recording a family member of NKVD officer, the guy who was shooting the persons. And it was such a case that both of us were very, very young at that time. And we spent almost 2 or 3 days in that family because we were just recording and making scan of these family photo archives. So Irakli was scanning and I was drinking vodka. So in the end of the day, I was totally drunk and Irakli very rich, and so the Solov's archive was very, very rich with photos. So I wanted to say that sometimes if you want to get a good interview or good material, you have to drink, so you have to become the part of their family. Nowadays I'm going to speak about perpetrators. The persons who used to be investigators during great parties of 1937 and 1938. So this question was taboo not only in Soviet times but after the Soviet Union. So persons you will see today have never appeared in such sphere because the family try to keep their grandfathers in very secret places. They are not very glad when you are knocking on their doors. It's very, very difficult to make sure them to speak with you. And of course, there are very different narratives in different families. All these members, now another technical question, how I found out them. So in 1953, deperization process started in Tbilisi. So we had 3 different processes on different levels in Soviet Union. So one process was Moscow. So I was not able to find any descendants of Moscow process because Sergei Gogolyadze, Bogdan Kobulov, and these top high Czechists were sent to death execution in Moscow, and their family members disappeared from history. Some of them even changed their surnames, so I'm not able to find them. But I was quite able to find descendants from railway theatre court and from Tbilisi and Sukhumi processes. During the railway process, it was, let's say, it was process against the second echelon of Lavrenti Beria supporters, and the third process was mostly Czechists from middle managerial level, from Georgian KGB plus Georgian, Azerbaijani and Armenian KGB, because they used to work in Transcaucasian Gosbezopasnost, state security. So I did interview with this person. So when I got their criminal cases, of course there was mentioned where they are living. And as soon as I saw this, I went directly and knocked on the door. But it was not very easy to find out them because I missed one interesting thing, that after 1955, most of them changed their living places. So then again, the same methodology as Irakli told us, who is the oldest person in this house, do you know his number, and so on. So the process went on. In this place, so it is railway station, railway theatre station, it was processed in 1955, it was called process against Beria, so I mentioned here, Vodelia Delyachkin Lavrenti Beria, this means our Lavrenti Beria is famous folk Soviet song, and this famous folk song was sung also in this theatre in 1955, but accidentally when once me and Irakli were just speaking about mass graves in radio, one person phoned us and he told us that he knew he knew this place of mass graves. Of course, he was not right, but he was brilliant source for me because at that time he was 8 years old and he was living on the other side of this railway theater. And so he saw how these very influential persons who were just ruling the whole Transcaucasia were jailed, and how they were entering in this theater and how people were observing all this process. After this process, the processes went on the lower level, and one of the persons who was arrested was Misha Shaugulidze. Misha Shaugulidze's biography is very interesting because he was born somewhere, he was born in Kutaisi, and later on he developed his career, and in 1955 he was deputy head of Minister of Internal Affairs of Georgia. So the process of deberization was very active in Georgia because Beria had really big supporters, and one of the first persons who was arrested was Misha Shaugulidze. At that time he was not as young as on this picture because it's in 1928. Here Misha Shaugulidze is prominent Chekist, very young. He graduated this intelligence school in Moscow. In his family album we have some photos with his comrades in Moscow, probably from different republics. And in 1955 Misha Shaugulidze looks like this. And when I started to find out his family memories, I had no any information. We had only information from his official protocol that his son was arriving and attending on these processes. But then from this photo I came to the story of Misha Shaugulidze from this Nino. So you see that Nino is just attending. So when I met Nino, she was 60 years old at that time. So she had clear memories about Misha Shaugulidze. It was quite difficult for me how to make conversation with Nino because Nino loves his grandfather. She sings that Misha, when Misha was arrested, it was big trauma for his family, and she's really very proud of his grandfather. Grandfather is not hero for her, but still she loves him. So it was quite difficult for me what to ask her. So I can't tell her that, your grandfather is perpetrator. He tortured during one night 20 prisoners. He was one of these dangerous investigators. Everyone was afraid of him. He was inventing new methods of perpetration and torture in Santradia. So I can't tell her these stories. So I started a conversation with her. Okay, can you simply describe your grandfather? And as you rightly mentioned, then I became, at that time, accidentally, her son was jailed, so she needed someone to speak something. So I was on the right place, on the right time. And then she started discussing with me and telling me the whole story of her family. So on the one hand, this brutal Chekist, this very lovely person in this flat. Of course, it's almost like this. But it was really interesting for me that Nino has never asked a question why her grandfather was arrested. She told me that, I think maybe he was arrested because he was a big supporter of Joseph Stalin. And then I'm asking her, what about Beria? He respected Beria, of course. Czechs respect Beria. But for Nino, and then I asked, when you got your flat? Because her grandfather arrested one person, then sent to a death execution. After this, he settled in his flat. And she said that my grandfather was really experienced Chekist, and state honored him and gave a flat as a present. Unfortunately, these stories are going on, and when she mentioned that, you know, I have one relative, and this relative is much older than me, and he remembers quite well Misha Shalgulidze, and of course I asked her, and so I started now to make circle around Misha Shalgulidze. And after this, of course, I went to this relative, and this relative was not as open as Nino, because he was 75 years old. He was nearly 20 or 80 when Misha Shalgulidze was arrested. So he really remembers for what reasons he was arrested. So he tried to avoid my questions. Misha Shalgulidze is a Czechist, and he tried to present Misha Shalgulidze how he used to be in family. So it is also quite interesting thing for me, because in this way I can fulfill another part of my research. Czechists, how they are at home, how they behave in family, with friends, and so on.
Excuse me, I just want to ask you, Bruce Shalgulidze grandfather mentioned the word Czechist?
No.
That's all I thought.
No,
because,
sure.
Yeah.
We have also such kind of Czechists who are in generations, and I will try to show you in the photo. So after this Saakashvili, this guy who found me and directly also knew him, Misha Shalgulidze. So now I'm making a circle around Misha Shalgulidze, but I think oral history is not enough. So now I'm in the process of waiting. I'm just trying to find additional sources for making new stories around Misha Shalgulidze, and I'm sure that I will find also some persons who knew him personally. But Misha Shalgulidze is very interesting. From the oral stories, we understand that when he was sent to labor camps for 25 years, you know, in labor camps, it's not very easy to survive. And I read in archive that he was working as a librarian in labor camps. So it's quite strange. Why? Because all these Czechists have to work on very hard jobs. And then Nino told me, you know, Misha had his friends, and they helped him to work as a librarian. But there was another person, not very lucky, Sergo Daulianidze. Sergo Daulianidze was much more influential than Misha Shalgulidze. Misha Shalgulidze was from middle level, and he was very close to higher level managerial staff in NKVD. And he's also a very interesting person, because he was a person who loves writing too many letters to Laurenti Beria. If you are checking his criminal case, you see that there are too many letters. And Sergo Dauliani, I interviewed Sergo Dauliani's grandson, this one, also Sergo Daulianidze, and it was a very interesting experience for me and Georgi Kodiashvili, because he also denied to say even a word about his grandfather. He was very angry. So he opened doors because we knocked, and it's not very polite to say, no, I'm not giving you an interview, get out of here. No, he invited us, and at that time I firstly saw when the really big man was just trembling like this, because he was really not afraid, but it was very stressful for him to ask questions about his grandfather. But of course, Sergo Daulianidze is also very proud of grandfather, and he mentioned that this criminal case against Sergo Daulianidze is absolutely falsified. 24 volumes are falsified. But Sergo Daulianidze, after me and Georgi, okay, you can see also now. So these photos, by the way, gave also this guy, because he was. At that time, he hated us.
Sorry, can I ask you, what were accusations against Sergo Daulianidze?
He was sent to labor camps for 25 years.
For what?
for he was
Writing letters.
of disordering social justice during the investigation processes in 1937-1938. It was article 8410 and 84.9. So, and these photos Sergio Daulianidze gave us, not because he allowed us, because he wanted, as soon as we have to leave his house, he had such feelings, okay, I am giving you these photos and please leave my apartment. And as soon as we left his house, he made this video, and in this video now he tried to legitimize his grandfather, and he tried to connect our activities and his father's working in KGB with the events of 1956, 9th of March in Tbilisi. So he is presenting this official biography of General Daulianidze and trying to prove that General Daulianidze was Georgian nationalist and he was arrested because of participation of these March events of 1956. But Daulianidze was in reality arrested before these events. But his grandson tries to legitimize his grandfather in this way. And it's very interesting that he made this video in 2 days or 3 days after our visit and immediately put on YouTube. And then we got this notification from Outlook and it was quite interesting to him. And he tries not to use he has a really brilliant photo album of his grandfather. And he tries to use the same photo that he gave us. No additional photos, no additional material. And of course, this Sergio Daulianidze, when he was nervous in 5 minutes, he told us the bulk information about his grandfather. And the bulk information was what? That he was 17 years old at that time. And so he visited his grandfather in labor camps. And after his grandfather, he also worked for KGB for 25 years. So he's really very scared. And he said, you know, he told me that these files are not existing anymore. And you find out them in Moscow? I said, no, they are existing in Georgian KGB. And then it's personal information. I said, no, unfortunately, that's implied, so we have any rights to see on this material. So, honestly, we could not get any additional information about Sergio Daulianidze, except that he was living very poor, that salary was not enough for family, and that he was a very honest person and honest Czechist working for KGB. But Sergio Daulianidze and his family members, of course, all the time forgot about the flats, about the apartments, for what reason they got it, or in what kind of flats they got. You know, 6 rooms apartment even now in Tbilisi is very good. And Sergio Daulianidze is got because he arrested another person. And this is the person who parts the whole Guria and Achara and plus Giatura. He was very, very active Czechist. I want to switch from Sergio Daulianidze, also another Czechist with whom me and Irakli had really, with his descendants, not with whom, because he passed away in 1981 or 2, in the 80s. So this is the person, if you write down his name, Grigol Pachulia, you will get different memories, and all these memories are connected with parties in Abkhazia. So Grigol Pachulia was interesting Czechist because he before was simply Tbilisi Dynamo coach, and before coaching he was football player for Tbilisi Dynamo. Laurenti Beria, who loved very much football, knew him personally, and he was all the time supporting him on every level of his life. And in 1937, the football player was adopted as the head of NKVD of Abkhazia. If you recall, when I reported 2 or 3 Abkhaz about Pachulia, they told me, yes, we know. That footballist, играет чекист. So, okay, it's clear. They knew that he was football player and he was Czechist, but how he was developing his career and how oral histories help to reconstruct the Pachulia's biography. I was looking and searching for this family almost maybe 5 years. Firstly, I went to the house next to Square of Heroes. So they used to live in that apartments. Then one old lady, the oldest in that apartment, told us that Pachulia's wife sold the flat in 80s and they moved somewhere, and we weren't able to found his family, but accidentally Irakli, our friend wrote Irakli, and then we will find out his family. His daughter is still alive, so you can see his daughter is Sohumi enjoying this dacha, because this dacha belonged to Pachulia's family when he was working in Sohumi. So his daughter remembers almost everything about his father. It's now clash. Now we have a clash of memories between two generations. Memory of his daughter and memory of his granddaughter. Of course, the daughter loves his father, and she said that I don't understand such a nice father like me, why he loved Beria so much. This is the main question for her. On the contrary, her granddaughter had a big conflict with his grandfather, and for this reason, she was just asking me what he was doing during the great parties. So she is really very open, and during this interview, Irakli was recording and I was just speaking, and then I was not able to keep in secret, so I gave her the whole criminal file of her grandfather to her, and asked her, please don't let your mother to read it, because she is very old and she will be very nervous and we have to take care about her. And after 2 days she wrote me on Facebook that I can't imagine what he was doing. So it's now we have another case. If Sergo Dauliani's grandson said that my grandfather is hero, so she said that no, my grandfather is a typical brutal perpetrator and Czechist. She is supporting us with photos, with letters, and it is case when me and Irakli are not keeping scientific questions and scientific interests from the families. We tell honestly that your grandfather was this, you read this letter, so if you can help us, we want to reconstruct the other side of your grandfather's biography. So this is how he looked, and this is the Dinamo Tbilisi. By the way, he for 20 years almost worked as a director of old Dinamo Stadium, which is not existing anymore. And this Dinamo Stadium was built by Laurenti Beria, and before building this Dinamo Stadium, he seized property from Germans who used to live on this Alexander.
Today the Expo Georgia's
Dinamo Stadium nikуда не скуча. Нещо никуда не скуча. It was, and now I want to tell you another stories, and I spent in this. I have never lived in this house, but I spent nearly 6 months every day in this house. It is Rustaveli number 1. In 1940, Laurenti Beria, with the big support of Laurenti Beria from Moscow, Tbilisi Central Committee financed the building of this house. And this house is exclusively Czechist house.
Not the one on the left, the one on the right.
No, on the right.
On the right, yeah.
with Bill, Roy, and
What's
Bob.
name is that?
Exactly. Yeah.
There was a supermarket or something like a barber shop or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
called what's name?
Yeah, it's a new house. Yeah. So in this house, all the Czechies are living. How I find out about these Czechies? When this process was ongoing in Tbilisi, one of the persons who was arrested, there was an address, Rustaveli number 1. So I went to Rustaveli number 1, but I don't know his flat's number, and there are, I don't know, a huge building. So, as you know, in Tbilisi, outside there are some bells and also names and surnames. And I started to look for this surname, and then I found out that these surnames are very common to Czechish surnames. After this, I went on and I found out that they knew each other, and plus they know the biography of each other. And it was such kind of gold mine for historian. But now I had no experience how to work with Czechists. I saw that everyone would behave like Serbo-Davlianics. But on the contrary, in this house I find out that their behavior is absolutely different, because they have no knowledge what their parents were doing. Not anymore grandsons and granddaughters, but parents, because it is such kind of family apartments and their children are still alive. They are old, but they are alive. Firstly I started, I have to create a story. If you tell them that I'm working about perpetrators and great parties of 1937, they will deny everything. So I said that I'm just starting to, and I really start, to work on the project, the biography of workers of Georgian intelligence during Stalin's period times.
What is true?
It's not true. Yeah, and so they were very happy, especially the old ladies, because they told me, oh, someone remembered our father. And then it started. Firstly, I was planning to finish working in this house in 1 week. Then deadline passed to 1 month, and then I said, okay, it doesn't matter, deadlines, I have to work here. So I was knocking, not every door every day. So I was first working with one family. After I would finish with this family, I would ask them, can you recommend me to your neighbor's family? And they were knocking to neighbor and telling them, you know, there's a young historian and he's interested in these biographies. And then I was just moving up and down in this place. But of course, there are some exceptions. And I guess that if I will start to publish these documents, I need rights for publication. So I had a kind of paper, and I got the signature from them. And once I forget this paper, and I went to this woman's granddaughter's house. She wasn't very happy seeing me, honestly. But she gave me an interview, she gave me photos and so on. But after 2 days, when I phoned her and asked her that maybe you will sign the document, she said no, never. Because I'm still frustrated why I gave you these photos to you. So I have right to show you, but I will never publish the photos from Arubeliz's family. Because she told me that her grandfather or her grandmother was working for NKVD, and she was investigator for women. So women were just simply investigating women criminal cases. So all the brutalities which was happening with these women during the investigation processes were almost done by her grandmother. And she was very scared after this. Once I met with her on the street, and she told me, no, not to publish it. But she missed one thing. she mentioned about her son who was working in London. So after she denied to publish these documentations, I wrote to her son and told him the whole story that I was interested. And he told me that, okay, publish, and in case then I will speak with my mother. But of course, I'm just, I have no rights to for publication. Maybe I will write again to his grandson. I sent. It was also interesting that I sent her all this, all this documentation, how his grandmother was working and her behavior, and he had no any reactions. He told me, oh, it's clear it was such a period that you can publish it. So he's businessman, so he told me that don't disturb me, do whatever you want, because I have my own businesses in London, not anymore connected with your Tbilisi. And next to this person is Kamkamitze, and he's working in this in this family, and collecting these oral histories and plus photos. I collected nearly 500 oral history records and nearly 3,000 photos of Czechists who used to live in this house. Of course, we have such clashes of oral histories, and this clashes is connected with apartments and different houses and Czechists. So this is house on Asatiani Street and this is Lermontov Street, this one, and this is Machabeli Street.
Yeah.
So it's very old, one of the very, very nice, with one of the oldest buildings in Tbilisi. So this house has no, because for some time Melikazarians used to live in this house, but for me it's interesting because on the second floor, 3 Czechist families used to live. But then one Czechist, this person, Alexander Konstantinovich Morozov, repressed the whole neighbors, and in the end of 1938, he owned almost the whole second floor. So he was arresting neighbors, sent him to death execution, and so on. But it's not interesting for us. Now let's check the oral history and memoirs. Granddaughter of Alexander Morozov, who was in 1955 only 5 years old, she told me that I remember when I came back, there was nothing in my house. The Czechists were taking our furniture, books, and chairs. It's interesting, furniture, books, and chairs. So it was we had no criminal case of Alexander Morozov because he was never arrested. But later on, I found out criminal case of Heidze, Piotr Mefodovich Heidze. So there is mention that when Morozov arrested him and took his flat, so enlarged his apartment, he also confiscated his furniture, books, and chairs. So in 1955, the son of Heidze tried to return back the furniture which belongs to their father. But according to oral history, her granddaughter has no information for what reason it was happening. She told me that he had such problems with NKVD, but what does these problems mean? We have no information. On the contrary, Heidze's family has fantastic memory how brutally Morozov was acting against at that time Petram Heidze, who was Givim Heidze, who was 10 years old. So they have really brilliant memories to be victims of great parties. But as soon as we are asking, because Heidze was a really very experienced Czechist, that how your grandfather's behavior was before great parties, because Heidze worked for State Security or GPU from 1922, so he was in 1937 very, very experienced. So he himself confiscated this place from different persons. He himself participated actually in execution processes. So in this sense, family has no any memories. So I wanted to mention that this is not the full research. I'm still in process to somehow to fulfill the memory of society and especially family members about their grandfathers. So I would like to find some more information, but it is, let's say, my speech is based on 5 or 6 interviews, especially from these processes and additional information from Jishkariani number 1. I want to